Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that in the 16th century, Martin Luther brought home a small tree and decorated it with lighted candles that were wired to its branches to show his children how the stars twinkled in the night sky? Join us on a walk through history to explore the world of Christmas trees, from candlelit trees to electric public displays that unite families, friends, and communities to remind us of the birth of the Savior.
Today, we're tracing the history of a centerpiece we think we know so well, the Christmas tree.
It really is one of those things.
It seems like such a simple, universal tradition, but it turns out it's a really complex, multi-layered history. We're talking ancient agriculture rights, religious rebellion, royal marketing.
And what's maybe most surprising, some pretty fierce legal suppression.
Yep.
Right here in America.
Exactly.
So we've taken a stack of sources here that really span millennia, and we're charting the evergreen's evolution from, this ancient symbol of resilience.
Right.
All the way through its refinement in German customs to, well, what it is today, a massive multi-million-dollar American industry. Our mission is to uncover those surprising origins, the critical turning points, and, exactly how this tradition went from being illegal to indispensable.
What personally strikes me is that the evergreen was already this powerful symbol of life in Rome, like millennia before it was ever tied to the Nativity. It's truly a synthesis of pagan, religious, and then eventually royal influence.
It is. Yeah, if we look at the timeline, we have to start far, far earlier than most people assume. We're talking ancient Rome.
Oh, okay, let's start there.
They held these winter festivals in honor of Saturnus, who was the god of agriculture.
And if you look at your modern Saturn ornament, and a lot of traditions still include one, you're connecting directly back to that Roman history. What's so fascinating is that the Romans decorated trees not with, bells or baubles, but with small pieces of metal to honor Saturnus.
Exactly. The whole ritual was about celebrating life's continuity, during the deepest part of winter when everything else was dormant.
So the evergreen just represented life's persistence.
That's the foundational DNA right there. That association with life and resilience, it informs everything that follows.
And as we fast forward into the Middle Ages, the tradition shifts. It gets more focused. Specifically in Europe, we start to see the rise of the paradise tree, which served a very specific purpose.
Right. The paradise tree was an evergreen, but it was decorated only with apples.
Just apples.
Just apples. And this wasn't just some casual decor. It was a critical prop. It served as the stand-in for the Tree of Knowledge in these popular mystery plays that were performed on December 24th.
Which was the feast day of Adam and Eve.
Exactly. So it directly linked the evergreen to the biblical narrative.
So it moves from a general symbol of winter perseverance to a very specific religious teaching tool. And then we see the practice really take hold geographically in Northern Europe, and it becomes this very public spectacle.
The sources point to this really fantastic historical nugget. We're talking 1441.
Okay, that's way back.
Way back. In Tallinn, Estonia. And the records there show an evergreen was decorated right in the town hall square.
A public thing.
A very public thing. The whole community danced around it, and then, and this is the wild part, ritually burned the tree.
A public performance art bonfire. I love that.
Yeah.
It tells you that these early traditions were highly ritualistic, very focused on the community square.
Totally. But then, in contrast, a 1605 diary entry from Strasbourg, Germany, gives us the first peek into the domestic custom. A tree decorated inside a home with paper roses, apples, and candies.
And that's the moment the tradition starts to move indoors.
And if that first section gave us the basic structure, then section 2 is really the German catalyst that fundamentally shaped the look of the modern tree.
A light.
The light.
Which brings us to Martin Luther. I always just heard he decorated a tree, but the source material suggests it was a specific moment of profound observation.
Yeah, it wasn't purely aesthetic. It was an attempt to capture and share this scientific and spiritual awe. The story goes that Luther was walking home one winter night, and he just looked up, marveling at the stars twinkling through the dense evergreen branches.
So it's that specific visual, nature meeting the cosmos.
He was so struck by it that he brought a small tree indoors. And then he took candles and meticulously wired them to the branches, specifically to replicate that stunning effect of the stars twinkling in the night sky.
So he was bringing the spiritual experience of the nocturnal forest into his home. It's an act of, it's technological innovation.
It is. all driven by this desire for beauty and instruction, which is why the candlelit tree, and eventually the electric tree, is such an enduring image. But, that innovation wasn't always so straightforward. We also find evidence of a very strange custom.
Oh, right, the inverted tree.
In 17th and 18th century Germany, yeah. They didn't use the whole tree, they would just cut the tops of evergreens.
And hang them upside down in the corners of their living rooms.
It looks so strange to us, but the sources suggest a few reasons. Maybe practicality, it took up less floor space.
Sure, in a small room.
And possibly symbolism, some link that triangular inverted shape to the Holy Trinity. But regardless, it just shows that while the evergreen was central, Europeans were still experimenting heavily with how to display it.
And while Germany was busy with all that, across the Atlantic, the mere sight of a decorated tree was considered, well, a dangerous and unlawful act.
Oh, the resistance here was aggressive, particularly from the New England Puritans. They viewed the whole tradition as entirely pagan.
A distraction.
A total distraction from pious observance.
Well,
We have William Bradford actively trying to stamp out what he famously called the pagan mockery.
and they took it way beyond just moral outrage. In 1659, the General Court of Massachusetts passed an actual law. It made any observance of December 25th, other than going to a church service, an offense.
A finable offense.
They fine people for hanging any kind of decoration, and this stern anti-festivity practice lasted well into the 18th century. It's just astonishing to realize how culturally divisive this centerpiece once was.
It really is. It shows that American Christmases were, they were austere for nearly a century. The sources show the tradition only managed to get around this staunch Puritan resistance thanks to German settlers.
Specifically in Pennsylvania.
Right. They just held on to their traditions and started decorating community trees. They slowly normalized it through sheer persistence.
And we can actually pinpoint the moment the tradition became personal here. We have this fascinating artifact. The December 20th, 1821 diary entry by Matthew Zahn from Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
What does it say?
He notes his family had gone out on the hill at Kendrick's sawmill to select their own evergreen. That's such a powerful record of that shift from the community square to a domestic custom.
And you see the enthusiasm growing in public, too. Take the 1823 invitation in the York Gazette for a Society of Bachelors event.
I love this part.
It promises a Christkindl baum, a Kris-Kringle tree, with decorations described as superb, superfine, superfrostical, schnackagastical.
Schnackagastical. That is glorious historical hype. It's clearly a product of that blend of colorful German-American slang.
Totally. It's signaling that whatever they were doing, it was going to be big, loud, and over-the-top exciting. They were advertising a spectacle.
And that spirit of spectacle, plus a desire for domestic elegance, is exactly what caused the tradition to explode a couple decades later, all thanks to royalty.
This is where a single image, an early piece of visual marketing, completely transformed the perception of the tree across the entire English-speaking world.
The 1848 Windsor Castle moment.
Queen Victoria and her husband, Prince Albert, who was German, they brought the first Christmas tree into Windsor Castle. But crucially, a newspaper published a picture of the royal family gathered around the tree.
So before this, the tree was seen as a kind of lower-class regional German custom.
A little weird, yeah. But once royalty did it, that perception immediately changed. This image was widely circulated, and it instantly made the Christmas tree popular and desirable in the United States. It went from a cultural curiosity to a necessary status symbol.
Americans wanted to mimic that royal elegance.
And the initial decorations reflected that, a blend of nostalgia and, scarcity. Early popular home trees relied on homespun materials, garlands of popcorn, berries, nuts.
Whatever was available.
Exactly. But that American focus on scale and commercial potential took over really quickly. By the 1890s, German ornaments are arriving here, but you can already see a cultural divergence. The sources note that Europeans generally decorated smaller, like 4-foot trees.
Whereas Americans quickly preferred their trees to reach from floor to ceiling.
If a tradition is good, we make it maximalist. And the commercial aspect was already fully operational. Christmas trees have been sold commercially in the U.S. since 1850. The foundation was set.
And that leads us right from homespun charm into massive industrial and technological shifts. The safety issues alone were paramount.
Yes. The shift from real candles to electric lights is arguably the most critical technological leap in the tree's history. Candles caused an estimated one-third of all fires during the season.
That's a huge number.
The electric light transition allowed trees to glow constantly, safely for days on end. It completely changed the viewing experience.
And that innovation is so deeply rooted in American industry. We forget that Thomas Edison had some of the first practical strings of lights made for Christmas display. But those early strings were wired in series. What's the deep dive nugget there?
If you lost one bulb, you lost the entire string.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
Exactly. Early electrification was expensive and complex. It wasn't until later industrial innovations allowed for parallel wiring that one burnt bulb wouldn't plunge the whole tree into darkness. That's what made the lights accessible for the average homeowner in the early 20th century.
Technology also dramatically changed tinsel. We read about the shift from lead-based metals to safer materials.
Well, lead tinsel was highly desired because it was heavy. Its density made it hang perfectly straight, and it reflected the candlelight beautifully.
But it was also a massive health hazard, especially for kids.
Huge hazard. So industry had to figure out how to manufacture lightweight, shiny materials that could mimic that high reflectivity without the toxic risks.
And the inspiration from those imported German glass ornaments in the early 1900s, that spurred the beginning of the U.S. ornament industry. It's a classic American cycle. Import an idea, innovate on production, create a massive domestic market.
And once the tradition was safe and commercially viable, it became a national landmark. President Franklin Pierce introduced the first Christmas tree to the White House in 1856.
But interestingly, that tree wasn't initially lit by electricity. Electricity was installed in the White House in 1891, but the first electric lights weren't put on the tree until 1894. It just shows how quickly that technology was adopted for spectacle once it was available.
And that paved the way for the grand public rituals. President Calvin Coolidge formalized the tradition. He started the national Christmas tree lighting ceremony on the White House lawn in 1923.
That act really solidified the tree's status as a civic symbol.
Absolutely. And right alongside that is the great commercial icon, the Rockefeller Center tree.
The sources say the very first tree there, in 1931, was small and unadorned.
It was actually put up by construction workers on the site during the Depression. It was less a landmark and more just a simple symbol of hope and community.
But again, American scale takes over.
It always does. By 1948, the Rockefeller Center tree had grown into the icon we know today, a fully decorated, enormous Norway spruce that can reach 100 feet tall. The quiet domestic custom had become a global media event.
So we've moved from ancient symbols to Depression-era hope. Let's bring this up to the present. For the listener who's curious about how this all functions today, what do the logistics of the modern tree look like?
Well, it's an enormous agricultural industry, and it's heavily managed. Christmas trees are grown commercially on farms in all 50 states, and it's a huge commitment. They take 6 to 8 years to reach maturity.
6 to 8 years. That means farmers have to think years ahead, managing pests, weather, market demand, for nearly a decade just to produce one crop. What does a farming process even involve?
It's intense. It requires constant shearing, that's pruning the branches into that perfect conical shape the market demands, and really sophisticated inventory management. Farmers have to rotate crops constantly. If you plant 1,000 trees this year, you need to be planting 1,000 more every year after that, just for a consistent yield.
Wow. And the scale of the market is just astonishing. 25 to 30 million fresh cut trees are sold annually in the U.S. alone.
And that's not even counting artificial trees. We're expecting about 12.9 million of those to be purchased this season, too.
So when you look at those numbers, it's clear the industry is based on reliability. The 5 best-selling varieties dominate for a reason, right?
They do. The Scotch pine, Douglas fir, Fraser fir, balsam fir, and white pine. They're chosen for excellent needle retention, a pleasant scent, and that dense, symmetrical shape that makes them easy to decorate.
I found the practical care details interesting. The sources explain why we need to water them so much. Most trees are cut weeks before they even reach a retail lot.
Which means they are incredibly thirsty by the time they get to your home. A fresh tree can drink as much as a quart of water a day during its first week.
A quart a day?
It's a high-maintenance symbol of life. And when you think about the scale of some evergreens, like the 268-foot-tall redwood General Grant in California, you understand why they've always been such powerful symbols of vitality.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a journey that spans from ancient agricultural rights through the theological genius of Martin Luther, the stark reality of Puritan resistance, and the marketing power of Queen Victoria. It's a tradition born of both nature and technology.
Right. And the sources connect this global reach back to its spiritual dimension, noting that the tree can remind people of the birth of the Savior. That historical analogy of the shepherds following the star is mirrored in our use of stars as tree toppers, directing our focus.
And that history leads to a compelling call to action.
It does. That as we celebrate, we should think about how we can direct our lives to serve others during the season.
That's a thoughtful way to connect the past to the present. And it leaves us with one final thought for you to mull over. We've seen that the tree was originally decorated with simple, natural homespun items, apples, nuts, popcorn.
And later, with expensive, highly industrialized products, blown glass ornaments, lead tinsel, electric lights.
In a tradition spanning from worshiping Saturnus to wiring candles to branches, the single constant is the evergreen itself. So considering that vast shift from early homespun decorations to today's massive commercial industry, what does our choice of decoration, our preference for artificial versus natural, for vintage versus high-tech lights, tell us about what we truly value in this tradition today?
Is it nature, nostalgia, technology, or just pure spectacle?
That's something for you to explore as you light up your own centerpiece. Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.